Chapter 8 of Angel Food Little Talks to Little Folks by Rev Gerald T. Brennan. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Recording by Maria Therese. A piece of white ribbon. Do you remember your first communion day? Sure you do. Why, that was the biggest day in your life. If your first communion day was anything like mine, it was the happiest day of your life. Why, I can remember everything about my first communion day. Oh, that was a grand day. There will never be another one like it. Well, this story I am going to tell you today is about a boy in a first communion class. The boy's name was Joe Henry. On Joe's first communion day, he looked swell. Joe had a new suit, new shoes, clean shirt, and a white tie. And all the boys in Joe's class wore a nice white ribbon on their arms. They made a swell picture, just like every first communion class does. Well, here's what happened. Joe's communion class was in the church, and it came time for the priest to talk to the little children. He gave them a dandy talk, and the little boys and girls listened to every word. Here's one thing that the priest told the class. He told the boys in the class to always keep their souls nice and clean, to keep them just as white and clean as the white ribbon they wore on their arms. Then he said this: "Boys, take that white ribbon today and put it in a safe place. Keep that ribbon and keep your soul just as clean as that ribbon. And I want you to do this. The first time you ever commit a mortal sin, take that piece of white ribbon and throw it away." Little Joe Henry sat in his seat and listened to every word of the priest. He was so happy when Jesus came to him for the first time. All that day Joe was happy. That night, just before Joe went to bed, he took his piece of white ribbon, folded it up, and put it in a little brown box. Joe Henry grew up. He grew up to be a big boy. He grew up to be a big man. Joe Henry grew up to be an old man. He was 73 years old, and one day Joe Henry was taken sick. The doctor came, and the doctor told Joe that he was going to die. The priest came and heard Joe's confession and brought Holy Communion to Joe. The priest was getting ready to go home when Joe said, "Father, will you open that top drawer over there and bring me the little brown box that you will find there?" The priest opened the drawer and brought out the little brown box. Joe Henry opened the box, and there, inside the box, was a piece of white ribbon. It was folded carefully. It was Joe Henry's first communion ribbon, the ribbon he wore on his arm on the greatest day of his life. All through the years, Joe had kept that ribbon. Never once during his life did Joe ever make a mortal sin. Joe didn't have to throw away his first communion ribbon. That ribbon was the most precious thing that Joe owned. It was the sign that Joe had never made a mortal sin all through his life. And with that record, Joe Henry died. I'm sure that Joe Henry is up in heaven today, very close to Jesus Christ, because Joe Henry never made a mortal sin. Wouldn't it be swell, boys and girls, if you could stand before God on the last day of your life and hold in your hand your first communion ribbon? Wouldn't it be grand to be able to tell Jesus that never once during your life did you hurt him by making a mortal sin? If you ever want to get to heaven, that's just what you've got to do. You've got to keep away from mortal sin. Jesus hates mortal sin. You should hate mortal sin too. It's your biggest enemy. Be afraid of it. Run away from mortal sin, because it will do you harm. When a boy has a fight, he doesn't like to get licked. Well, you've got to fight mortal sin all during your life, and you've got to fight hard. Don't you ever let mortal sin lick you. Let's be just like Joe Henry. Fight to keep your white ribbon. End of Chapter 8.